Hello, it's Dave Allen, the dating specialist here. In today's video, I'll be talking about the latest episode of the TV series 90 Day Fiancé. Now, 90 Day Fiancé provides me with some specific scenarios I can respond to and teach principles. I'll be speaking to each of the American cast members in this episode whose fiancés are overseas. Now, you may notice that as I'm talking to these cast members, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. There aren't a lot of data points that we have in these episodes, and so I want to be careful about making any quick judgments. And so, any comments that I make, keep that in mind. We don't have a lot of data points. Also, keep in mind the producers of the show are using specific clips to highlight the stories they want to tell. And so what we're seeing on TV isn't necessarily the full story. So once again, that's why I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. So with that preface, let's get started.
So I think one of the themes in this episode is we've got a number of these 90-day fiancés that are coming in. They're coming from another country, and they're coming into new situations, and they're having to go through this transition. And this transition is tough. It's tough for them. It's tough for the people they're in this relationship with, and everyone's just trying to make it work. It's stressful, and that puts stress on the relationship and brings all sorts of opportunities to learn how to work through problems together as a couple. And we see this with Mike and Natalie. So Natalie's going through this tough transition. Not only is she coming from Ukraine to the US, but she's also coming from a big city to a small town, and there are a lot of transitions that come with that as well. So she's got three main issues. She says, I'm just constantly cold, which is surprising to me. I thought Ukraine was really cold, but I guess where Mike is even colder, I'm not sure. She also said, what will I do here alone? And that's a tough one too, because Mike's going to be gone all day. He said he can leave before she even gets there, and he's not back until 8 o'clock at night. And so that's a legitimate concern. She also has a different diet than him, and that's tough. And he kind of, he's gone grocery shopping for what he's used to eating, but she eats particular food. She likes to eat more healthy than Mike, and so that's going to be a stressful point as well. And again, all these things are tough transitions for Natalie. Now, I love one of the things that Mike says here.
I can tell you that she's going to get stressed out. It's going to happen. I totally understand that. You know what I mean?
And I really appreciate that, Mike, that you are being sensitive to that you are feeling that empathy for her and realizing that, hey, this is going to be a process of time. She is going to get stressed out. It's going to happen, and that's okay. And I can see that you are working really hard to be patient with that. And that is awesome. Keep up the good work on that. I know it's stressful for you as well. You're working really hard to make her feel comfortable, but it feels in a lot of ways like you can't win. So what do you do with that? First, one thing I would recommend is, you're doing really good at trying to identify some solutions to her problems. And so that is important to go ahead and suggest some of those solutions, but you also need to make sure that you're taking time to express understanding, to express empathy, rather than trying to solve all the problems for her. One of the things that we see Natalie say is we see her say, I think Michael doesn't understand what I'm going through. In other words, she needs empathy. When you're sitting in empathy, what you're doing is you're saying, that's really hard. That's painful. Try to really understand. Tell me what you're going through. That's got to be hard. And rather than jumping in to solve it, I can see why you would be feeling that way. As you validate her feelings, and then move from there into encouraging her to solve her own problems when possible. Obviously, you know the area, and so there are going to be certain things that you are going to need to suggest some ideas, but express faith and trust in her ability to find good solutions. Let her know that you are there to support her in any way you can, and yeah, just again, focus on that empathy, on that understanding. And that's what she needs right now, even more than the solutions, although she may not fully realize that. There was that exchange that you had where she wants to go to the waterfall. She wants to see some beautiful nature. You're kind of saying, hey, that's far away. I can't do it this weekend. We'll do it in 2 weekends. And that's really tough for her. Because she's going to be alone so much, she needs something to look forward to this weekend. So Mike, Now, by the time you hear this, you're going to be past the stage where you can do anything about this. But if you could go back in time, I would say try to find something that she can look forward to this weekend. If you can make the waterfall work this weekend, great. That's all the better. If not, if seeing beautiful nature is something that she could connect with, then is there other beautiful nature that's close by that she can do this weekend? She's going to have these weekdays that are really tough where she's alone. Make sure she's got something she can look forward to every weekend. Later on in the episode, there's this great moment where it's a tough moment as well, where she pulls back and she says, I need time for myself. And Mike, what you do is you go up and you comfort her, you wrap your arms around her, and that's what we call a repair attempt. And that is fantastic. A repair attempt is anything that helps to calm the situation down or de-escalate. And that adds what we call a positive to the relationship. And you want to make sure you've got a high ratio of positives to negatives. And so this repair attempt of you coming up and giving her a big hug in this moment of conflict, what a great moment for the two of you. Now, then you're trying to kind of get her to talk more. You've got some frustration there, which is totally understandable based on everything you guys are going through. But if you can work on in those moments when you're comforting her and you're using that repair attempt, try to be gentle. You kind of say, "What are you thinking? Talk." There are more gentle ways you could reach out to her and try to communicate with her, and again express that empathy and as make her feel safe in being able to express her thoughts and feelings of what's going on by validating those feelings, saying, I understand, and saying, that's really hard that you're going through that. So anyway, overall, Mike, great job. You guys are going through this tough time right now, this transition time, but keep up the good work. Again, focus on empathy. Don't jump too quick to solve her problems. You can come up with some ideas, but focus on that empathy and that understanding, that wrapping your arms around her and helping her to feel loved, accepted, and comfortable. So Stephanie, you're 52 years old, you're from Michigan, and you're dating Ryan, who's 27 and from Belize. Now, it sounds like you've had a pretty tough childhood. You had a dad who had bipolar disorder, and that's really tough. And I'm guessing there may have been some other things as well. I'm sensing there are some other things from your childhood we may not know about yet. But because of that, because of your dad being bipolar and perhaps some other things, you said you've built some emotional walls to protect yourself, which of course you have. That's something that's naturally going to happen. And if I were to guess, now I only have a couple of data points at this stage, but I would say that likely you tend towards what we call avoidant attachment. And so what you're more focused on is, do I really want this person? And that's been most of your dating life. And that's why you find yourself, again, having put up walls and you're at a distance from people and you haven't had a lot of serious relationships and you've been more focused on your career because of this avoidant attachment. Now, sometimes when you're avoidantly attached, you'll date people that are more emotionally detached from you and they tend towards the avoidant side. That actually pushes you to what we call anxious attachment. And I think that's what's happening in your relationship with Ryan. And what happens with anxious attachment is you tend to focus on, can I get him or her? And so when you're anxiously attached, you feel strongly attached, you feel insecure, you feel needy, you tend to be over responsible in the relationship. And that seems to be what's happening here. Now with Ryan, obviously the elephant in the room, there's this 25-year age difference. What I recommend for my clients, generally it's going to go better in a relationship if there is a 10-year difference or less. I know that's not the situation you're in now, but I'm just going to go ahead and throw that out there. With a larger age difference, there is going to be a higher rejection curve and a higher likelihood that you're being taken advantage of. And that could be the case here. Now, you've dated for 3 years, you were flying to see each other every 2 to 3 months, and now because of COVID, you haven't seen each other for 9 months. And the anxiety that causes is really going to push you to the extreme of either anxious or avoidant attachment. And in this case, it's going to be more of that anxious attachment. And so that's why you find yourself having a lot of fear about the relationship. You're contacting Ryan's mother on a regular basis, checking in Like if you can't get a hold of Ryan right away, you're talking to his mother. You mentioned that you're terrified, again, indicating that you've got that anxious attachment. So this whole process has caused you so much stress. You call and he doesn't answer. And because of all that stress and that anxiety, when you finally do get a hold of him, you say things like, "Where have you been all day?" And that can put some stress in the relationship. Now, the other thing, obviously, that has put some major stress in this relationship is that you have caught Ryan cheating a couple of times. At one point, you caught him texting multiple women on the phone. Another time, you caught him again on the phone with 3 different women. At that point, you broke up. There are definitely some issues here with Ryan and with the relationship. Now, one of the things that I recommend for my clients is that they really want to focus on, am I safe in this relationship? And to find that out, what we look at is, for the person they're dating, how is their empathy, their self-control, and their personal responsibility. With Ryan, I'm not seeing a lot of self-control here. He is, it kind of sounds like he's doing what he wants in terms of dating other women. I don't have a lot of data points, but that seems to be the case. Also with personal responsibility, you were the one to catch him. He wasn't the one to come clean about this, potentially indicating that he is not taking personal responsibility. Now, you've made your mistakes as well. It came out in this episode that you did sleep with Ryan's cousin, Harris. That happened while you were technically broken up. But, trying to continue this relationship now with Ryan, that's going to be a really tough thing. But in all honesty, as I look at this situation with a 25-year age difference and with how Ryan is interacting in this relationship and the potential self-control, personal responsibility issues, and probably empathy issues, I don't know that you are safe in this relationship. I'd invite you, if I were your dating relationship consultant, I'd invite you to go through some things and evaluate specifically Ryan's empathy, self-control, and personal responsibility. I could give you some tools to do that, and then you could kind of make that decision for yourself. But that's something I really encourage you to look at. Now, Brandon, you're finding yourself in a similar circumstance to Mike and Natalie. You and Julia are finding yourself in a similar circumstance. She has now come here to the United States to live with you. She not only is having this change of country, coming from Russia to the United States, but she's also having the change of having lived in the big city and now coming to a really small town and living on the farm. And that's a really tough change for her. So be sure, as I said to Mike, be sure that you are really expressing a lot of empathy, really connecting with her and what she's feeling. Allow her to express those feelings. Not necessarily try to solve everything, but just wrap your arms around her and let her know, yeah, I know that's really hard, and you can get through this, and I have faith and trust in you. Now, you have the added dimension of you are struggling with living with your parents, and that's causing all sorts of other issues. They have this rule about the two of you being in separate rooms. Now, you've kind of done what you can at this point to ask for that rule to be revoked, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Now, it is your parents' home. They are being nice enough to put you up, and so it is they have the right to have that rule if that's the rule they want to have in their home. So then, based on that, you and Julia need to decide together, what do you want to do with that? Are you going to be respectful of that rule and live in that situation for a temporary time period? And that'll be something you'll definitely need to make sure you're communicating clearly with Julia about. I think at this point that's something that you struggle with in general, is having that clear communication, having that direct communication. You tend to go into a passive mode and try and get out of communication and not address the issues, and you're getting pushed from both sides, both from Julie on one side and your parents on the other side. And you need to communicate clearly and set your boundaries, and set boundaries for you and Julia as well. So one of the things you need to clearly communicate, you need to have a conversation with your mom about boundaries. Now, the decision for birth control and for whether or not you use a condom, that's between you and Julia, and it's not your mom's right to be involved in that process. And you need to make sure you clearly communicate that to her and set that boundary. At the same time, I would say your parents care about you and the things that they're saying and the advice that they're giving, that comes from a place of love. And so don't discount that completely. Pay attention to those things. Make your own decisions, but make sure you are making the decisions and not just letting life happen to you, and think of the potential consequences of things. Rebecca, for this episode, there isn't a lot that happens. We see you and Zied, but you're both kind of shown in each of your respective countries, and there's not a lot shown in terms of your relationship and interactions, so there's not a whole lot to comment on there. Congratulations on Zied's visa coming through. I think that was a great moment, and great to see you so happy in him coming over. Then we see kind of the other side of that, and we see Zied's family and how it really was heartbreaking to see how sad his parents are, to have him leave, and knowing they may see him minimally, if at all, for the rest of his life and for the rest of their lives. I think one of the things that comes out from this moment is, hopefully this is a good moment, Rebecca, for you and for other members of the cast of 90 Day Fiancé to really connect with the sacrifice that Zied is making and that others that are coming from other countries are making to be with you. And that says a lot, and to do, again, all that you can to have empathy for them and to be patient with them as they make that transition and moving over to the United States. Jovi. So you and Yara have had a bit of a tough week. There's been definitely some conflict here, some communication issues, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. So Yara is obviously not thrilled with how the apartment looks, not thrilled with the size of the apartment. That's a tough situation. It's a tough one for you, and it's a tough one for her. Now, she doesn't communicate it very kindly. She says a lot of things like, all of your furniture is so ugly, and he has swamp taste, a number of other things like that. I would throw out there that some of those things potentially indicate there's some potential red flags there with empathy. Now, if we look again at the questions that we ask to make sure, are we safe in a relationship, we're asking, do they have empathy? Do they have self-control? And do they have personal responsibility? Now, the way we define empathy is the ability to recognize and respect another person's feelings, rights, and needs as valid, important, and separate from your own. And so if she was recognizing and respecting your feelings, she wouldn't necessarily be communicating that in that way. She still has that feeling and that need about the looks of the apartment and what's going to be comfortable for her, but she can communicate that in a more kind way. So keep an eye out for that. Now, you need to be concerned with your level of empathy as well. And so if we flash back to an earlier episode where she just came into town, she's been on the flight for 30 hours, and you're ready to go out and party, and you're kind of hurt that she's not willing to go out and party. That was a little bit of an empathy lapse there for you in not being able to, again, recognize her feelings and needs at that point, and just being focused on your own. So while we talk about looking at those red flags in others, it's also good to look at ourselves and where we might improve in those areas. Now, both of you, through this exchange in this episode, you said some unkind things. She said he has swamp taste. You said, learn your English. So again, it's important to pay attention to the words you're saying and how you're communicating to one another, making sure you're communicating your feelings and needs in a kind way. One of the things where I thought you did good with empathy, you did recognize, you said, I know it's something important for her and I want her to be happy. So yeah, the decor and the furniture is going to be important for most women. It's a common thing, and it's a key part of helping them to feel at home. Like with these other 90 Day Fiancés that are coming in from out of the country into the United States, there is just a lot that they're dealing with in this transition. And so really having a lot of empathy for them and connecting with them is just going to be so powerful. And so I'm glad you were able to do that. Now, I'm sure it was tough for you that she wanted to change everything all at once. You went to the store with kind of an idea of, we're going to get a rug or we're going to get a mirror, one or two things. And then she's kind of like, we need a new sofa, we need a new rug, new bed, new table. I know that's tough, and it can even feel a little bit personal. You tried to provide good things for her, but to her, your sacrifices are not good enough. So I know that can be painful for you as well. The best thing is, again, clear communication. When in doubt, spell it out. an effective communication technique would be to use what we call I statements, and something that's going to not feel so attacking to your partner. So you might make a comment in this case, say you wanted her to communicate in a more kind manner to you and you needed to express that feeling and that need that you have. You may say something like, when you make comments such as all your furniture is so ugly and you have swamp taste, I feel, so there's that I statement, I feel hurt and disrespected. I definitely understand that it is important for you to have furniture and decor that you like. I would really appreciate it if you could communicate that in a more gentle way. I know I have said some unkind things to you as well, and I'll try to do better. So you use that I statement, you communicate that, in a way that's not going to engender further conflict. And then you kind of look at like, how are they going to react to that? Now you need to make sure, you try to use that I statement, not in the heat of the moment, in a more calm moment, and express that feeling or need. And then if they are someone with empathy, they're going to have that ability to recognize and respect your feelings and needs. And if they're not responsive to that, again, that is another red flag of, hey, there may be some empathy issues here. And if someone, no one's perfect at empathy, self-control, and personal responsibility, but if they have major issues in any one of those areas, that's going to be a real tough person to be in a relationship with. Another thing in terms of the communication for you guys in this episode, I'm sure that budget is an issue for you, and that's an important thing for you to communicate about as a couple. So you might say something to her about, I'd love to buy things for our apartment that you will like and help you feel more comfortable, but because of budget and things like that, I'd like to do that over time so we can afford it over time rather than trying to afford it all at once. And again, see how she responds to that. Someone with empathy is going to respond to that and be like, yeah, I understand that. There are going to be budget issues. I appreciate that you're willing to do these things for me, but it's going to be okay if that happens over time and not all at once. So anyway, those are a few things that you can consider, Jovi. Andrew, for you and Amira, man, you guys are in a tough situation. I know you really took a chance in meeting in Mexico during COVID, and now you've got this situation where Amira has been detained in Mexico City. I don't have a whole lot to say, and again, there wasn't a lot of interaction between the two of you in this episode. It may be that, obviously Amira had some concerns and her father had some concerns about the trip, and perhaps you could have had some more empathy about that. But I do have empathy for you as well in the situation you're in, and how long it's been since you've been able to see each other, and that is a balance. And you guys really have to work together in communicating those things and negotiating those things and making sure that both parties are comfortable. Now in this case, maybe Amira wasn't so comfortable, and again, maybe that's something that you could have had more empathy for, and kind of tying into that and finding a solution together that both of you would have been comfortable with.
So those are some of my thoughts on this week's episode of 90 Day Fiancé. If you are struggling to find lasting love, set up some time with me and let's have a chat. I do video conference sessions with clients all over the world. Click the link down in the description to schedule some time with me. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and ring that notification bell.